Good evening, guys. My name is Jaimee, and I have a quick question for you guys. Guys, make you a little nervous, but how many guys want to get married at some point in your life? Alright. What if you're told that by the government that you aren't allowed this equality because the person you're in love with doesn't fit the mainstream profile of the perfect spouse? No, not because you guys have irreconcilable differences, but because you and your partner are homosexual. My topic today is gay marriage. So my proposition is, banning gay marriage has a negative impact on equality. My main supports are: 1, legalization of gay marriage is discrimination. 2, gays have American right to marry. Recently, the state of California has passed Proposition 8 on November 4, 2008, which changed the state constitution to restrict the definition of marriage to only opposite sex couples and eliminated same-sex couples to get married. The passing of this proposition brings me to my first point. Illegalization of gay marriage is discrimination. Passing laws on judging by people's sexual preferences increases this discrimination. According to Mark Strasser, who wrote Legally Wed Same-Sex Marriage in the Constitution from Cornell University, prohibiting same-sex marriage might nonetheless strike down such a statute on equal protection grounds, since such state bans involve attempts to invidiously discriminate against lesbians, bisexuals, and gays, and thus do not even meet the least exacting standards used by the courts. Meaning, the courts have allowed gays to be discriminated against, contrary to what the courts mainly defend based on equal protection grounds. Secondly, the legalization of gay marriage increases intolerance. According to Beth Allen of Associated Press, who wrote a piece about Prop 8, we live in a country that has just made it acceptable to take away millions of people's civil rights, which illustrates the growing rate of intolerance of certain groups, like the gays. Consequently, these actions of intolerance forcibly makes gays into second-class citizens by denying them the rights that are given to all other classes of people. Denying the gays the right to marry is a violation of their religious freedom. For example, civil and religious marriage are two separate institutions. The main reason for denying marriage to gay couples is that most major religions think that homosexuality is a sin. However, the First Amendment of the Constitution clearly states that a person's religious views or lack thereof must be protected. Marriage by the state is a secular activity by the government, and the government can't just start making laws just because religion says they should, and the church and state are two separate entities. Which brings me to my last point: gays have an American right to marry. America has been faced with different forms of inequality throughout its years, and two examples of minorities fighting for their rights are the abolishment of slavery and women's movement. But ultimately, slavery was abolished, and women were granted the same rights as men. Even if an individual personally opposes the idea of gay marriage, they can't argue that it's still an infringement on equality. For example, in 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed, and there are probably individuals who opposed acts due to personal prejudice. But the act was still passed, and the recognition of equality was still given. The Declaration of Independence guarantees all men and women are created equal and the pursuit of happiness. There's nothing in the document that clearly states that illegal ban on gay marriage. On the contrary, there is an equal protection clause in the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution that professes a commitment to the proposition that all men are created equal. Also, in the First Amendment of the Constitution states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the exercise thereof. Therefore, the practice of gay marriage is lawful through its exercise of their religion. In conclusion, banning gay marriage has a negative impact on equality. By taking away a person's legal right to marry, we're just expanding on intolerance. We as a society are justifying the right to make someone into a second-class citizen based on their based on their sexuality. How can we say that everyone in America is given the same rights when in this case the right to marry is taken away? Hopefully one day we can say without a shadow of a doubt that every citizen in this country is undeniably equal, and that America remains the world's beacon of freedom, hope, and equality for all. Thank you.
Proposition's clear. The phrasing works as a claim of fact the way you've put it together. The secondary claims are labeled pretty clearly. Your internal labeling is okay. The explanation of the legal standard, though, I don't think is particularly clear. I think you've got a mixture of issues that are going on here. You did a good job, though, citing the authorities that you're quoting on these particular points. There are a couple of places where there's some awkwardness. You make a comparison between, the rights that are defined in the Declaration of Independence, and you say gay marriage isn't mentioned in the Declaration of Independence, and I thought that's kind of an interesting example, like that would be something that you would expect. But the same problem applies when you say men and women are created equal. That's not in the Declaration of Independence either. We're a bunch of sexist pigs back in 1776, and women were not given that specific right. The argument that women were subsequently given rights, I think, is an interesting point, but it represents a growth in the way rights have evolved over time, and I think your argument isn't that the rights of homosexuals to marry are evolving or that they are devolving. It is that they exist and they're being denied, and I think that's the argument that you need to develop a little bit more. Like I said, I thought you did a good job citing the testimony of the authorities that you're presenting. Sometimes your voice drops a little bit when you're speaking, and so it's a little hard to pick out some issues. Oh, and that's it. That's it.